My name is Doyle Davis. I'm co-owner of Grimey's Records in Nashville, Tennessee. Sig Sigworth, the president of Craft Recordings, and Mason Williams, involved in A&R there, walked into the store one day, and I was introduced to them and told them, you know, how big a fan I was of the Jazz Dispensary series, or their label in general, but how that particular reissue series was just resonating with me and was like right in my sweet spot. So, you know, I was just over the moon that they invited me to curate one of these. So, I mean, ideas immediately started going through my head, you know, which tracks am I gonna pick? And, you know, I wanted a nice variety. They did give me a caveat though, that this particular collection, since it's the 70th anniversary of Prestige Records this year, they wanted this one to be only recordings from Prestige's catalog and not from just all the various labels that they have rights to. So my immediate impulse was, you know, to be a nerd and do research. And so I'm like looking through all these recordings and like listening to tracks on YouTube that I don't own. And I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm just gonna try and find songs I don't even know yet to put on my compilation. Reset. And I went down to my basement where my record room is. And I still have my records sorted from all the years of doing my defunct radio show. And I've got basically two shelves in a record cabinet that are nothing but soul jazz records, the kind of records that are featured in the Jazz Dispensary series. So I just went through my soul jazz stacks and I pulled out every record that was on Prestige. So I had a stack of records in front of me now to go through, and it just kind of started falling into place. The first track I picked, I think, was Super Bad by Idris Muhammad. Then I really wanted a vocal track on there, and there are not a lot of vocal recordings on Prestige. And I just thought of the Funk Inc. cover of Message to the Meters, which I love. It's produced by David Axelrod, and it adds kind of a psychedelic vibe in there. And I don't know, so as the process started going, it sort of emerged that I was picking songs that I had always played on my defunct radio show, throwing soul jazz into the mix with funk and soul to try and appease my Jazz Jones, but you know, really funky, groovy stuff. And I just was like, I'm just gonna pick tracks that I'm very familiar with, that I've DJ'd with for years and years, both on the radio and out in clubs. And it came together pretty quickly at that point. Ended up being all cover songs, basically soul jazz covers of soul and pop songs. So it was sort of a theme developed there as well. And I felt like, well, this is perfect because it really ties it into who I am and where I come from. You know, I wasn't overthinking it. You know, I went with my gut, and that's where we got the collection. Out of pulling out all my Prestige records and going through the process, you know, these are the ones that ended up making the cut. Super Bad by Idris Muhammad from Black Rhythm Revolution. The Message from the Meters by Funk Inc. from the Super Funk. What a great album cover, right? I bought this record for the way it looked. I didn't know, it was the first album I ever got by Funk Inc. And I didn't know their catalog at all yet. I just like, this must be great. And it is. Another one of my favorites, Sparks by Melvin Sparks. This has Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, the Sly Stone cover. Boogaloo Joe Jones, one of my very favorite soul jazz guitarists in general. Sort of a Grant Green, but lesser known, and I think every bit as good. And this has the Feel the Earth Move, the Carole King song, which is super bad, super funky. And I love the back cover. I think they should have made that the front cover, to be honest with you. This is the oldest track on the collection from 1965, Richard Groove Holmes' Soul Message. And this track here is a song for my father, the Horace Silver Jazz Chestnut, one of the greatest hits of jazz, given a really, really nice, cool, kind of mildly psychedelic groove. Like I say, this is the oldest track on there. It doesn't really have the funk syncopation beat yet that most of the others do, but super, super groovy. So 1965 to 1975 is really the sweet spot for this kind of music. You know, they've got the innovations from James Brown, the funk sounds being worked in, but you know, haven't smoothed out to the disco beat yet. After 75, you just can't be sure if the record's gonna do it. Houston Pearson here, Truth. This has a very funky meters cover, Sissy Strut. This is the only track that we did an edit for on the record. The track itself is 8.5 minutes long, and it never resolves into that amazing drum break that sometimes these tracks do. So I felt fine with fading it out after about 3.5 minutes. Charlie Earland, Black Drops. This is probably my favorite full album out of the batch here. This record is amazing. It needs its own standalone reissue. And this has Sing a Simple Song, another Sly cover. It's fantastic, it's just a stormer. And then last one, Bernard Purdie, Shaft. Yeah. A little bit later record. This is later than all the others. It's from like 72, I believe. I'm not 100% sure of that. And the date's not right there, so you might not want to quote me until you do some fact checking. But I mean, Shaft, I mean, come on. Everybody loves that song. It's what a groove. It's one reason why these compilations like the Jazz Dispensary series are so important and vital, is that they are sort of rescuing this music from the past and making sure it lives on in the future. I mean, a lot of these albums are not on Spotify or streaming services, and yet the Jazz Dispensary series generally does go to streaming. So this will put some of these tracks back in circulation for the first time in decades, honestly. I did the sequence at home multiple times. Now, I don't have a DJ setup at home where I have 2 turntables and I can seamlessly segue back and forth like a recording would sound, but I would play the songs and then switch the record and play the songs. I did 3 sequences. The third one was the charm, if you will. I mean, I had my songs picked out. It was pretty easy to pick an order to go in. I wasn't totally happy with it the first time. I switched 2 songs from one side to the other, and then, as I mentioned, I also ended up taking what I had as side 1 and making it side 2 and flipped it, and I just felt like that's it. To really make sure it sounded right, I took all 8 records with me to my radio show on WXNA, where I do have the turntables. And so I did 4 songs at a time with a talk break in the middle, which would be when you get up and flip the record. So I played side 1, all 4 songs through, talked, then played side 2, all 4 songs through. And at that point I knew for sure this is the sequence, I'm done. The way I delivered the sequence is I just sent an email to Mason with the tracks in order, and I had the times with them and which album each was from. He took it from there, and then he wrote me back a while later and said that they had gone to the vaults and pulled the original tapes. So everything on this Jazz Dispensary record is mastered from the original analog tapes. I was blown away that they actually went with my title. I sort of, well, it wasn't jokingly, but I was just being suggestive of, like, I know all the volumes of the series, have some sort of like medicinal weed kind of tie-in as far as what they're titled. And so I suggested this one be called the Dank Defunk Blend. And that's right there on the sleeve when I looked at the art, and I'm like, yes, so cool. And a few weeks ago, Mason sent me the finished artwork. And oh my God, that was just so cool. I mean, this thing is beautiful. It's wonderfully psychedelic. It's a very trippy looking album sleeve. The Dank Defunk Blend compilation, the Jazz Dispensary record I curated, will be out on Black Friday this year, November 29th, at independent record stores everywhere. It's over 1,200 stores that participate in the Record Store Day releases with Black Friday, and they should all have it. It is a limited pressing, and so you need to get there early and make sure you snatch one up for yourself.